Oh, did we start it yet? Have we started it yet? Okay, well, that was the 30-second warning. That was the 30-second warning. Okay, well, we had a meeting at 3 o'clock, a closed session, and then we had our 2 hours of budget conversation. So we took a little break to get a bite to eat real quick, and so I appreciate your indulgence with these extra 15 minutes. And with that, I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council on Wednesday, March 27th, 2024 at 6:15 p.m. And would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Lyons?
Here.
Councilmember Ehlers?
Here.
Councilmember Hinsey?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Blackwell?
Here.
And Mayor Krantz.
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present.
And if you can, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, yeah. That's me. Okay, so she wants to talk on minutes.
Okay. Tonight we are recognizing an esteemed member of the community in honor of Women's History Month. And if I could get Connie McIntyre to come up and her family, if you would all join me up here, that'd be great. Connie could be here, and the family there, and the family could get up on the back as well. If you turn her around, that would be fantastic. And we have Connie, we have Valerie, we have Lolly, who also is named Linda, but known better as Lolly. We have Charlie, son, Christopher, who is better known as Smokestack, and Caprice McIntyre.
And Courtney.
Sorry? Oh, okay, good to see. Yep.
And Courtney.
Okay. And it's my honor to be able to recognize Connie McIntyre for all that she's done in our community over the many, many years that she has lived here. I have known her since we moved to Encinitas in 1960. Her husband was an esteemed instructor, teacher at San Diego High School for many years. But in her own right, she demonstrated significant leadership in our community. And I'll get into the details a little bit more of those contributions here as I read the proclamation. Whereas Connie McIntyre, alongside her husband Charlie, contributed significantly to the community of Encinitas since 1957. And whereas Connie demonstrated exceptional dedication by nurturing her family and raising her children, Valerie, Linda, affectionately known as Lolly, Charlie, and Christopher, also known as Smokestack. And whereas Connie's husband, Charlie, a beloved teacher at San Diego High School, dedicated 34 years of teaching and enriching the lives of countless students. And whereas Connie and Charlie's enduring love and partnership stood the test of time as they were happily married for 59 years. And whereas Connie's commitment to service extended to founding initiatives like Meals on Wheels, becoming the first paid member, and co-founding Hospice of the North Coast. And whereas Connie's passion for preserving history and heritage led her to serve on the board of the Heritage Museum and the Encinitas Historical Society, and whereas Connie's unwavering faith and involvement with St. Andrew's Church have enriched the spiritual fabric of the community. And whereas Connie's innovative spirit led her to establish the XYZ's Lunch Group, which stands for Extra Zest for Life, empowering individuals to embrace aging with zest and camaraderie. And whereas Connie's upcoming 90th birthday on April 18th is a testament to her resilience, wisdom, and enduring legacy. And whereas her daughter Lolly lauds Connie's resilience, noting she never complains and is one of the kindest people she's ever met, and me as well. Now therefore, I, Tony Kranz, Mayor of the City of Encinitas, along with all council members, proclaim that throughout Women's History Month and beyond, we honor Connie McIntyre for her remarkable contributions to Encinitas, her tireless dedication to enriching the lives of others, and her embodiment of the spirit of service and community. Thank you, Connie. Thank you. And I'd like to give her a moment to say a few words.
What? Oh. You know, when they first called me and said something about this was National History and Women's Month, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to look up all the women in history. And it was Tony that said it was for me, and I'm totally undone, you guys. I don't know what to say. It seems like, you know, I've gone through life here. I've loved Encinitas the whole time. And, you know, it's been fun to participate in so many things I've done. Even Meals on Wheels, my gosh. I saw little miracles every day of our volunteers cheering our clients. And when we started that program, there were no services in Encinitas for seniors. There was just nothing. And it was an elderly couple struggling at home in wheelchairs trying to fend for themselves and get food that got us to really get going with Meals on Wheels. And that was just one instance of what was happening. And that's remembering Father Paul Cam, who was at St. Andrews. No sooner had we gotten Meals on Wheels going, then we had another dear friend and very much activist in the area. Some of you may remember M.A. Knopflet. And M.A. was dying of cancer, and she was alone. And it was Tony's mother, who I kind of have to share this award with, because his mother, Tony, that was Antoinette Tony. And we were very close friends. And it was because of her and our other joint efforts of getting the Hospice of the North Coast going. And but it was M.A. Knopflet who we found that really needed that service. And the Historical Society, working with Lloyd O'Connell and Carolyn Cope for so many years, and the Heritage Museum, that's fun. That's fun stuff, you know. But as Tony read everything off here just now, I just thought, my God, no wonder I'm so tired at night.
Well, thank you for sharing it, and it was really amazing, given your friendship with my mother and the work that you did together with her. She unfortunately died very young, but I eventually served on the Encinitas Historical Society board, and Connie was on that board, and we had a great time. It was really, really an honor to serve with you in that.
That was fun.
Yep. So I'd like to close this by asking my friend Charlie, who graduated from San Diego with me in 1977. I want to recreate a picture that we have here.
Oh, my God.
I gotta look like this. You look straight, I gotta look.
It's like 2 steps to
Okay. Stop laughing. I'm gonna look like this.
Okay. So you gotta look kind of over to him.
Okay, like this.
That's like that much. You just gotta look straight in the camera.
Kind of like up over
The
there.
biggest angel of the lid. Okay, thank you all for indulging me. Did we get pictures of the whole crowd? Yeah.
Is it gonna go on paper? Is it going in the paper?
Courtney, come up here.
It's gotta go in the paper.
Next to Grandma.
In my newsletter.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, wait a minute.
You know, look here. Hold on. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Tony.
So much.
Good to see you, man. I know we're gonna be on the front page of the paper.
Okay, thanks again. I appreciate that a lot. And with that, we'll move on to oral communications.
Yes, Mayor, we do have 5. I will call you 3 at a time. And just as a reminder, oral communications is the time to speak on items that are not listed on the agenda. And each speaker will have 3 minutes. The first 3 speakers, Trina Priest, Peggy Walker, Scott Campbell.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. Good evening, Mayor Krantz and Encinitas City Council. I am Trina Priest, a middle school teacher and a mother of 3 teens. Many of us who work with teens have been discussing this study recently published in the Lancet Psychiatry journal regarding the increase in the number of mental health patients who have cannabis use disorder, especially among our young adults. This often occurs when smoking, vaping, and consuming marijuana is done daily. Those experiencing cannabis use disorder were more likely to attempt suicide and less likely to finish high school compared with teens who had never used. Adolescence is an especially risky time to smoke, vape, or consume marijuana because the adolescent brain is still developing well into early childhood. During this period, neural connections within adolescents' brains are forming, getting reinforced, or being pruned. The current highly concentrated THC marijuana products are essentially new drugs and profoundly affect teens and young adults' brains and daily functioning. As a parent of 2 teen sons, I recognize that males overall, and especially the ages of 16 to 25 years old, are more at risk for cannabis use disorder. And now more studies like the one published in the Lancet Psychiatry are coming out daily to document the connection between cannabis use disorder and the subsequent development of the psychiatric disorder schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a serious mental condition that includes inappropriate actions and feelings, withdrawal from reality and personal relationships, and delusion, which gravely disrupts personal and family life. It is very unfortunate that our city now has marijuana storefronts located next to youth and family attractive businesses. These entirely new marijuana drugs are prominently sold at marijuana storefronts and gravely affect our youth. The last 4 years have brought a lot of research that clarifies that they should not be a part of any city's job to enable their presence. Perhaps it is time, for the sake of improvement of our city's public health and safety, for our city council to initiate a ballot measure to counter this addiction for profit industry and remove these businesses from our city. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor, I like the headband. Good evening, council. I'm Peggy Walker. I'm a policy analyst and public health educator for San Diego Alliance for Drug-Free Youth. We work to protect kids from an adult marijuana market that will stop at nothing to target kids. For example, let me share this. The California Environmental Protection Agency found certain FDA-approved synthetic food dyes are linked to child hyperactivity and other neurobehavioral problems. These synthetic dyes give real food products like Doritos, Jolly Ranchers, and Cheetos their signature colors. A current bill, AB 2316, would ban the sale in schools of food products containing these synthetic dyes. Yet, while AB 2316 targets real food, the marijuana industry lobbied successfully last year to keep those same dyes in high-potency edibles that mimic popular snacks and candies, responsible for sending kids to the ER. The ban on synthetic dyes in marijuana edibles was proposed as part of the Child Cannabis Candy Safety Act last year, but the pot industry lobbied successfully to stop it. In a similar move, Stizzy, a permitted operator here, contributed $40,000 plus to state legislators just before a key vote killing a ban on flavored weed products last year. It's the height of hypocrisy for the industry to claim to want to keep kids safe while insisting on flavors and dyes that target kids in kid-friendly candy and snack lookalikes. And so I just ask your awareness of industry tactics that target kids. If the state can't do it, it may take local bans and policies to protect our youth. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Next speaker is Scott Campbell, followed by Natalie Satoon, and then Elena Thompson.
Hello, my name is Scott Campbell, and I live in Encinitas District 1. It's interesting, we have 4 districts, but we say we have 5 communities. The math is kind of strange there. Property negotiations, Cardiff flooded. I can guess what the deal is. But it makes me think maybe the city should come out and say how we're doing on Piraeus Point. I think a lot of people would like to know where we're doing on the property negotiations for that point, 8-9 acres. Previous speakers talked about Eolus. We just went through how many meetings on Eolus. Please don't do it. Is there a policy on frequency of stop signs? If you put one on Parkwood, that's within, I'd say, 150 yards of an existing stop sign. That's too much. I do appreciate all the Vulcan stuff. It looks like we're going to get a rail trail one way or another, whether we do it officially or not, just based on landscaping. We'll get one. You know, people are asking for doggy things and signs. We're going to do it. But let's talk about special meetings. What's the deal with the special meetings? Why not just have it as part of the regular agenda? I don't get it. Is it to shift the time zone down? It costs a lot of money to have these meetings. All these special meetings have to have staff. We have 3 law enforcement officers. I just saw that. I just watched it. It's a huge part of our budget is to pay for all these staffs. What was really interesting was watching the staff report, and they skipped over page 5, which was one of the best pages. You guys have it. It's on the published. Everybody in the city can watch this. And it talked about how the council started trusting staff. That's a good thing, because a couple years ago, we had some very bad dynamics with the council and the staff. It's very obvious. Public support, it says you're getting some public support. I'm not sure how, why, but you are. I see it. I'm part of the public. I've been supporting staff. I was talking to some of the staff in the back, supporting them, efforts that I see. I don't even talk about some of this stuff with the council. I go directly to the staff, and that's a good thing. I was trained in the academy to go to the staff and not bother the council. 37 seconds. Okay, so on the upper side here, it talks about commissions. Let's focus on this. It says, more effective meetings, less words. A number of you on the council could probably heed this advice, and we wouldn't have to go to 11:30 at night. And that's really all I have to say. I wish I could do more. I'd love to talk about this. I'm going to actually hand this out. I'm done. I just want you guys to notice that I want you to find the patterns between yellow and the orange and funding. It's quite interesting. Lots of more budget stuff coming up. Thank you.
Followed by Elena Thompson.
Hi, Natalie Zatoon Cardiff. First of all, Bruce, thank you for 2 units, the suggestion of 2 units for traffic safety. Thank you. That's really important and needed. Also, I went to Catherine Blake Spears Town Hall last Wednesday, and I don't know if you all had the opportunity to see the slides, but I actually went to hear Summer Steffen talk about lower level fentanyl use, which actually never came up, but I learned so much about the different potency and variants of fentanyl. I really hope that you all can take the time to see the slides and educate yourself on the different potency, because it's really a killer. And for unsuspecting people, you never know you never know what you're touching. So we had a deputy a year and a half ago. He was processing some evidence over at the substation, and I'm sure he was using an abundance of caution and ended up going down and having to be sent to Scripps. So I would really like our parks particularly to have some oversight to make sure that fentanyl is reduced in our parks. So I'm actually here to speak about the tax increase survey. I received the survey and took the survey. I think I'm one of 800 maybe. And I'm really disappointed because the survey wasn't about where the potential increase would flow to. It was more about the wording on how can we steer our voters to vote in favor of the increase. So it was a multiple choice. I'm sure everyone can receive it. But it wasn't necessarily how is this going to impact our community, but how can we get it so that you all can do what you would like to do with it. And I have to say, there are so many studies that have happened recently that I just don't have a lot of faith in. We have the Iris Bond-Gill diversity study that she quit and it was not complete. The displacement study report, it was full of faulty data, not specific to Encinitas. The Leucadia drainage study, we haven't done anything yet. The rail crossing studies, Verde undercrossing, a lot of things are shelved. And there are so many more pressing issues. We need cyclist safety, drainage, roads, utility undergrounding, and increasing our first responders. So please focus on that rather than the fluff, and maybe the credibility will allow the voters to eventually do this and vote in favor of it. Thank you.
So that concludes, oh wait, no, we do have one more, sorry. I was like.
Hi, everyone. Elena Thompson. Thank you for listening to my public comment tonight. It has increasingly come to my attention and the attention of people that I know that we no longer have a representative democracy in Encinitas. It seems that some of you, including the former city council and mayor, are taking us down a path of your own making. The residents of Encinitas and the taxpayers, the voters, I firmly believe want you fulfilling on your mission statement that's on the website. And that is, proudly committed to providing the highest level of service to our communities and the people that we serve by protecting life, liberty, and the environment. That's our mission statement. And I would add, like Connie said, our heritage. That's our heritage, all of this beautiful place where we live. So this leads me to my public comment, and it seems like to me that the city is not actually fighting for the residents. You're actually fighting for people who don't even live here and outside interests. And that seems glaringly obvious both in your legislative priorities and your focus on housing. Number two, it seems that you're fighting for Sacramento's power grab over cities in California, our own included, and the BIA's grab for housing here, and overbuilding, which is going to happen with this power grab that we're not trying to protect against. And I just object to these, to not protecting our local control. And number three, you appear to be waging in a way, and I hate to say this, I don't want to hurt your feelings because I like all you, and I've been a speaker here forever, but I feel like you're waging a cultural, social, and even political war on the residents of Encinitas. And by that I mean the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda. Who asked for this stuff? The trans agenda, the cannabis push in Encinitas, the racial barriers to housing in Encinitas. I mean, this stuff is calling us like white privileged people. It's very harmful, and this is a cultural war that I feel you're waging on us. Your plans to regulate housing, build too much housing, build government housing, your aim to regulate property owners who provide housing through fees and taxes. And even last week you talked about having staff look into a vacancy tax, and Joy was concerned we'd have too many wealthy people in Encinitas that have second and third homes. So let's just focus on the basic duties of government and get away from all this other stuff. I really encourage you to do that. Thank you.
That concludes oral communications.
Okay. With that, we will move on to item number 6, which is a report from closed session, which we did hold this afternoon. So I would like to ask the city attorney to provide that report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At approximately 4 p.m., the City Council opened the closed session, recessed into closed session, and recessed back. At 3 p.m., City Council recessed into closed session. They recessed back out of closed session at approximately 4 p.m. While in closed session, they discussed 3 items, as indicated on the special closed session agenda. They are closed session, conference with legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation, 2 potential cases under authority of Government Code 54956.9, subdivision D2, as well as conference with real property negotiator under the authority of Government Code section 54956.8. They discussed 1 property, 543 Ocean Cove Drive in Cardiff, California. In closed session, the City Council took no reportable action on any of the 3 items. And that concludes closed session report.
Thank you. Item number 7, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the posted agenda, and then moving to the consent calendar, item 8B has been pulled by a member of the public.
Is that
B as in
8D?
boy.
What?
B as in boy.
Boy. Minutes. 8B, so that leaves item 8C, 8D, 8E, 8F, 8G for consideration, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved. And 8A as well
8A?
would be included in that.
I did say.
Oh,
8A.
you did.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think I said A, but if I didn't, I mean,
Everyone
yep.
said yes.
So did we have a second?
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Kelly made the motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. Motion does carry unanimously. That takes us to item 8B, and the speaker is Elena Thompson.
Yes, hello. Just briefly, I did watch the housing or the displacement study that the state of California required our city to spend how much money on that was presented last week. And I wanted to point out that I disagree with the minutes that were captured from that meeting. I listened very carefully because it had to do with housing, and I happen to be a realtor in Encinitas. And there were some false statements in that report that most of you did call out. I was happy for that. But one of them was a false statement in the report that alluded to Proposition A. And I think the minutes need to be corrected because Proposition A, as some of you pointed out, is not the problem for or even related to displacement in Encinitas. So that's one correction for the minute. The other was the fella who said, I believe a lot. You all asked the fellow who presented questions, and he said, is his answer, well, I believe. He didn't really know the answer. And but what he did know the answer for is he pointed out that the recommendations in the displacement study were generic recommendations, not germane to the city of Encinitas. And a few of you actually grabbed onto some of those generic recommendations captured in the minutes, and it sounds like you're going to be asking staff to pursue exploring this vacancy tax on people who maybe live somewhere else in the summer and don't use their home because you want people in their homes, hopefully not illegals running across the border that, you know, are now occupying homes. But those recommendations, that statement in the minutes was incorrect, and I'd like to see that corrected. And then lastly, I believe, Ms. Hinsey, you might have convoluted the displacement study by tying in the Equity Commission study and asking that those two studies were wrapped together or something like that. And I take issue with bringing another controversial study into the displacement study, which I find highly controversial and problematic. And that's my comment to please correct the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My review of the minutes are that they are accurate. We do keep what are known as, it's a minutes that essentially just covers the facts, which is who put the presentation on, who the speakers were, the order of the deliberations, and the resulting council action, all of which are captured correctly. I do encourage anyone who is interested in an item to spend the time on the city's website. You can review the video yourself to hear everything that was said, because we don't try and capture what's said in the minutes. So this form of minute taking is something that we've been doing for about a dozen years. Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, and the comments, I think there were quite a few different comments made by all of us, not all exactly in alignment, but there was some general consensus. And when I read the minutes, I thought, do I pull it, do I not? But when I read the phrase on the action minutes, come up with a plan based on comments provided by council, that I thought took into account what had been said about Prop A in particular, about striking Prop A from the drawings in particular, or there was an inference of that it was the cause. So I'm okay with the way their action minutes, they're not like we used to do back in the original days of the city. So where each comment by each council member was captured. These are action minutes, and I think it's appropriate as written. The only thing I wasn't sure about, I didn't remember, and I should have gone back and looked at the videotape, whether we intermixed elements of the equity study. That I didn't recall, but I'd have to go back and listen to the whole thing to do it. So I guess what I would ask is, could we just make sure that was part of the motion?
Well, it was part of the direction that we had. I made it, that we, try and combine the requests for action in both so that we could bring it back together.
Okay.
So I do know that I made that request in an interest of saving some time, and it wasn't the Equity Commission work, it was the equity study that the council deliberated on.
Yeah.
And I think you were here for that meeting. I don't remember for sure, but I thought you were here. Part of the reason we do this, do these action minutes like this is otherwise we are dependent upon the city clerk to record all of the comments that are made and put them in a way that summarizes what we're saying, and sometimes that summary can be a little bit off. So the goal is to encourage people to check out the business that we conducted. The motion is recorded is very important, and she's always clarifying to make sure that what we're voting on is what, is intended. But ultimately, your best source is the videotape that will replay you the entire program. So with that, I move approval of the minutes.
I'll second that.
Motion carries unanimously. That concludes the consent calendar. That takes us to item 10A.
Thank you. And 10A is we're going to hear from applicant for the Planning Commission, Old Encinitas. And there is one applicant, so that means that there's a lot of pressure on you. You're it.
Good evening to everyone in attendance. Good evening, Council. My name is Brent Whitaker. I am a 35-year resident of Encinitas. Initially, I lived in Cardiff, just inside the Cardiff boundary, right off of Cornish Drive. And currently, I reside across the street on the Haciendas de la Playa Association. I'm married. I'm married to Dr. Elizabeth Whitaker. She works for Molina Healthcare. She is the director of behavioral health for their California plan. I also have we have a son. He's a senior at La Casa Canyon High School, and he's planning on attending Maricosta College in the fall. I have part-time work, primarily taking care of my family. My other part-time work, I have a job for insurance risk services and property and casualty surveys, which is now a part of Davies in North America. We do property inspections for a variety of insurers throughout the several states. The region that I am assigned is including Encinitas, as well as 8 other cities surrounding Encinitas, stretching from South Carlsbad all the way down to the Carmel Valley area, as well as the beach communities of Solana Beach and Del Mar, all the way out to Rancho Santa Fe and Carmel Mountain areas. Let's see. I am interested in participating in the planning committee. I have done some volunteering for my homeowners association, primarily in serving on committees that helped revise the CCNRs or the bylaws, as well as some of the rules and regulations for the committee, so the community that I live in. As I considered participating in this council, or this commission, I was able to review the Planning Commissioner's Guide, our handbook, put out by the League of California Cities. In doing so, I did want to let the council know that I would serve the community as best I could, and the businesses as well as the developers that choose Encinitas as a place to do business. And in so doing, I would be treat the community with fairness and integrity. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Ehlers has a question for you.
Yeah, and hey, I think you answered it by your response just now. When you said you've already looked at the Planning Commissioner's Handbook, which is probably one of the best references to learn about this, I was going to ask you, do you have time and are you willing to do the reading I went back and looked at, I keep track of how many pages of documents we have to read. And in 2021, it was an average of almost 800 pages per meeting, and there were 24 meetings in a year. And it went from a low of 50 to a high of 4,500. So it sounds like if you're already doing that research, that's great. I think that tells me you're exactly the type, and I'm the one with the, I've got 7 years of planning commission experience, and hopefully already know Kevin, the previous planning commission chair, and talk to him at this meeting if you can. He'll reach out to you. He'll give you some good tips. So.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, I understand it is a commitment. I am willing to make that a commitment. Certainly, it does sound like quite a workload as far as just reading material, reviewing projects, but it's certainly something that I can make time for.
Good.
As I just do part-time work.
Yeah. Like I say, I think before you could even ask the question, I think you answered it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hensy.
Yeah, I was going to tell Bruce, don't scare him away because we have a willing applicant here. So I wanted to say thank you for putting your name forward. It's clear that you have the expertise to do this based on your participation in HOA, which I hear are sometimes more contentious in our council meetings and maybe even longer in some parts of the city. So again, thank you. And I think the mayor, you make the recommendation? Okay, I'll go ahead and move approval of your appointment to the Planning Commission for District 2.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
I should actually revise that and say Planning Commission for the old Encinitas because it's not the same as District 2.
And I do think that it might be good to take a look at the stipend that we pay the commissioners for the Planning Commission. Given the page count that you were just talking about, the commitment of time is significant. So I know we just had a budget discussion where we were about $14 million over what we had, but 16, well, so anyways, but I do think that it's time to reconsider that. Okay, on to item 10B, which is the financing plan for the Encinitas Public Financing Authority. And I should have said, now it's official, you've been relieved of your responsibilities on the Planning Commission. I very much appreciate everything that you did for us in the many years that you served there. So thank you, Kevin Doyle. So now officially 10B, and we've got some Financing Authority business to tend to.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We have a presentation on the financing overview for the 2024 lease revenue bonds related to the purchase of land at the northeast corner of Highway 101 and La Costa Avenue. And tonight, this evening, the presentation will be given by our financial advisors. Brandon Kafori is the Director of Urban Futures Incorporated.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff. My name's Brandon Kafori. I'm with Urban Futures, UFI. We were hired as the city's municipal advisor earlier in the year, and I'm really pleased to be before you tonight presenting this item for the 2024 bonds. I will try to keep it a little shorter than one of those Planning Commission packets. That'll be the goal. So with that, we did want to just give a very brief overview of our firm. Urban Futures has been around for over 50 years. We are a full-service municipal advisory firm. We work with public agencies throughout the state, like the city, and we're actually 100% focused on California municipalities. So that's really enabled us to be very active in the state. We actually are really proud of the fact that we do more transactions than any other firm, and that's been consistent over the past several years. We've got some information here on the firm. We serve some of your neighbors. We work on lease revenue bonds, and it's really our job to serve as the fiduciary on the transaction and run the day-to-day process of engaging the team and representing you on financing day to ensure the lowest cost of capital for this important project. So we have a brief presentation on the bonds themselves. So the idea tonight is to present the financing plan. We will intend to come back with council's approval tonight later in April to present the financing documents and a resolution authorizing the issuance of the bonds. But in your packet tonight, there's some information on the transaction. I've got those details here. As you're aware, we're intending to structure a $5.7 million issuance of lease revenue bonds. Those would be intended to reimburse the city for the purchase of the Surfers Point property that was completed in September. The bond proceeds combined with monies in the open space acquisition fund will be used to complete the transaction. This structure of lease revenue bonds has been used by the city numerous times over the past several years, most recently in 2021 on your refunding transaction that was completed. In order to complete the financing, the city will need to engage a team. So in addition to UFI as municipal advisor, we've listed the proposed team on this slide. We'll need a bond and disclosure counsel who will be served by Best and Krieger, underwriting services provided by Hilltop Securities, and a trustee bank, which is U.S. Bank. So this is a team that has worked with the city previously. It's the same team that was engaged via 2021. And they have extensive knowledge and experience working with the city. We'll also be working with Standard & Poor's to request a credit rating, and that will happen later in the month of April. I did want to touch on the bond market, which is always exciting, but you have to, when you work in my industry, you have to try and lighten it up sometimes. But it's some good news is that the bond market has improved somewhat since the fall when the city purchased the property. So we've seen rates move down, starting late last year on news that, inflation was supposedly coming under control and that the Fed may lower interest rates this year. So I've put on this slide just some snapshots of municipal market data, or MMD, which is our benchmark yield for tax-exempt bonds. The 10-year has come down almost 50 basis points, or 0.5%, since late last year. And the 30-year maturity has also reduced. So this is where we are currently. As you know, we are intending to get into the market later in April. And so the idea is to move along quickly and take advantage of a good market situation that we're seeing right now. I won't spend too much time going through this, but this was presented in the packet. It is an overview of the financing itself. We are intending to do a 30-year term, tax-exempt fixed-rate issue with level debt service. And those payments, based on estimates as of today, are around $347,000 a year, and the true interest cost of 4.43%. Again, these are estimates. They include estimated issuance costs, all included in that cost, and will be locked in when we actually price the bonds later next month. This essentially shows what the city's debt profile looks like. I understand this was in your one of the presentations shown earlier today. It should look familiar, but I think it's helpful to see how this transaction impacts overall credit, the city's debt profile. So we've gone ahead and modeled that on top of the city's existing debt. It's in the blue stripe bars. So as you can see, there are there's an interesting point that occurs after 2031 where debt starts to roll off. Until that point, the city has about $5.5 million roughly in annual debt service, and that will start to decline as we get out past 2031 and then again in 2033. So it's definitely interesting. I think this exercise is helpful for this issuance and any potential future debt issues the city may be contemplating. Just to wrap up, so as I said, our thought is to continue our work with drafting documents and preparing the financing. Should council approve the plan tonight, we would hope to come back before you in a few weeks, around April 17th, to present draft bond documents, a resolution authorizing the issuance, and good faith estimates for the transaction itself. With that approval, we would then look to price the bonds later in the month of April, and that assumes we get the credit rating from S&P within the 2-week time frame that it typically takes. So all in all, we'd hope to be closed by middle of May. That is the current plan, and I think, with staff's help and the team they've assigned to the transaction, we're in very good shape to make that happen. So in closing, this is the recommended action for tonight. There are 2 items. So one is to approve the financing plan for the Encinitas Public Financing Authority 2024 lease revenue bonds. And second is to adopt the city resolution titled Resolution of the City Council of Encinitas, California, amending the 23-24 budget. So with that, I'm available for any questions, and if staff has anything else to add, we're here.
Thank you. I don't know if by chance you saw our 2-hour meeting before this meeting, but we spent a lot of time talking about capital improvement projects that the city needs and trying to figure out how to make our general fund revenue go further. And while I know that we're pretty much at the top, our debt capacity is pretty much near the top. I wondered, in looking at the city's debt profile, whether there's any way to finance more in a way that would have like become a greater payment in the out years, like starting in 31, where some of this debt rolls off. Would it be possible to borrow more and have the payment structured so that they fit within the debt capacity current, but then increased in later years when our capacity increased?
Absolutely, it's a great question. I think when you look at the chart, it's a natural thought to say, can we fit some puzzle pieces later on? I would say we'd evaluate each project and financing on a case-by-case basis. And what we'd like to do is, with your permission, we could look at a level debt stream versus some sort of, we call wrapped amortization. What you'll generally see is, while that does create relief in early years, overall it would increase the interest cost if you're deferring principal. But should it meet the needs of the city and be something that helps you achieve your financing objectives, then we could certainly look at that.
Well, so for example, we have a project that's currently under construction, and it's we're putting in stormwater facilities, and we've only gotten so far, and we need to go this far, right? So the question is it possible to obtain the funding through this financing in order to finish that pipe that's part of that segment of streetscape that we're working on right now? That's a very specific, that's the one that I see as the highest priority for potentially borrowing more money to complete that project. But I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit, and I think, if my colleagues on the council are interested in seeing those calculations and getting your advice on the feasibility of that, I think that I'd love to see it myself. So, Councilmember Lyons.
Yes, thank you. It's an intriguing idea, Mayor. What the item is before us right now, though, I just wanted to note that I feel like the stars are aligning in regard to the purchase of this property. It's always been kind of a very special place, and I love the fact that we're able to take advantage of a positive bond market to be able to do the best possible. I love the phrase you use, I wrote it down, to get the lowest cost to capital. And so I'd like to, I want to put forward to move this action for approval based on the recommendation that was put forward by staff and reiterated by our consultant.
I'll second the motion.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, I wanted to go down the path of understanding the 5.4 million per year is what percentage of our general fund, and in order to maintain our AAA rating or AA plus rating for lease revenue bonds, what are the guidelines that in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are meeting with Standard & Poor's next week, and I think that will be really informative. It's been a few years since the city's gone through that process. As you know, the city's debt policy stipulates 15%, right? Generally, that doesn't align, which you're probably familiar with the S&P criteria, which is in the top category for debt and contingent liabilities, which is, by the way, one piece of the scorecard. It's typically below 8% is where you would need to be in that highest category. There's another component to that test, which is your total debt to total revenues. And on that area, I think the city's around 50%, and that would put you in the strong category. If you go over 60%, it knocks you to the next category. The thing with S&P ratings is you could presumably be really strong in some areas, less strong in others, and still be in the AAA category or AA. So it's hard to give you an exact answer that, if you're below 8%, it's within those parameters. But certainly if, assuming all else equal, below 8% is typically where you want to be.
Okay, and the only question you didn't answer is where are we right now with the 5.4? And maybe that's a question for finance.
It's 5.6%, I think, right? Yeah.
It's good that it's 100 million in general fund revenue, right? And then the percentage works out pretty straightforward. Okay, so we're well under that. I am interested in what you propose, Tony. I'm not saying I'm for it, but I think you're saying the same thing, that let's at least see the numbers in front, have a public discussion about it, and go from there, because I think as we get to April 17th for our next budget discussion, that's where the rubber meets the road, and we really have to decide what projects have to be done. So, yeah, I think that answers my question, so thank you.
Madam City Manager.
So I just want to be clear. I think, Mayor, you asked if it could be done in this particular funding, and I don't think it can with this particular package for the property formerly known as Surfers Point. I think it would have to be a new process. I just want to make sure you understood that.
Yeah, I think the issue is, wouldn't it be in the same package? No?
So I think at this point, because, and I welcome staff to chime in if there's other feedback here, but given the timeline and the fact that we want to enter the market before fiscal year end, I think expanding it to other capital projects changes the financing structure. So for a lease transaction, you need to pledge property as collateral. So in addition to this parcel of land, we'd have to find another piece of real property to pledge. There's a title process, there's some additional costs, so it would definitely expand our schedule and likely push us into the next fiscal year.
And does that mean additional fees that wouldn't otherwise, or is it pretty consistent? If you're going to bump this up, the fees would be the same as if you started over from scratch?
Well, if I understand your question, are you asking, is it cheaper to include it in one?
Correct.
Yeah. So there, of course, there would be some efficiencies from certain parties. The fees I'm referring to are for title insurance, and those would be in addition to what we have, and a lot of the components of the issuance costs are tied to the principal amount of the bonds. So for underwriting, the higher the loan, the more cost there is. That's usually a larger percentage of the total cost.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for moving this action forward. Councilmember Ehlers.
I just wanted to clarify that I thought they were separate items, so that's when I said I was.
Well, one way or the other, I was trying to get to that same 6 million more.
Same, but yeah, but I appreciate the
and-
separation,
right.
and I urge moving forward with this financing quickly too, before interest rates do anything.
We're ready to vote.
Okay, and then before voting, we did have Elena Thompson
Elena
registered.
Thompson, public speakers.
I don't see her, but she registered support but does not wish to speak.
Okay, support.
So we can vote.
I appreciate the support.
And that motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have item 10C, where we are going to talk about the South American palm weevil, which is devastating palm trees throughout Encinitas, and is one of the ugliest bugs I've ever seen in my life. They walk in a way that really intimidates me a lot.
How do they walk?
Well, they got their back end is up high, and they're just kind of, looking like a bulldog, And they move very slowly, just like, it looks like a little robot. Yeah, and they're about this big. They're about this big. At least the one I saw. Maybe he ate better than others, but we'll hear from the experts now, right? We're gonna, I don't know if they're gonna have a picture of one in there.
Hi, I'm Katrina. I work with Chris on the City Arborist team. I'm here today to present some information about the status of the South American palm weevil infestation within the city. I am a certified arborist as well as a licensed pest control advisor. So I will get into it. So the South American palm weevil is a non-native pest of palms that has established populations in San Diego County. They're very strong daytime flyers. That's how they're able to get around so quickly. The larvae causes significant damage to the meristematic tissues. And once meristematic tissues are destroyed, the palm tree will die. Infestation symptoms can include yellowing of the foliage, stunted growth sometimes, flattening of the crown. Sometimes you can find pupal cases on the ground. And then if it's a severe infestation, you may notice holes or frass or tunnels at the base of the fronds. Early detection is very difficult and has to be done with a crown inspection. So hosts prefer to feed on Phoenix canariensis palm trees, which are the Canary Island date palms, but they do have alternative hosts. These species include Bismarckia, Brahia, Dipsis, Jubea, Phoenix rockinata, and the Dactylifera, which is the edible date palms, which is important to agriculture. Washingtonia, there's two species. There's the native species to California. There's also the non-native species. And those are both susceptible, we're thinking at this time. The adults do not cause damage to The palm trees, though, they will eat on tropical fruits like avocados, pineapples, papayas, mangoes. So when DUDEC initiated the inspection protocol within the city, there were 280 Phoenix canariensis palm trees in the inventory in January of 2023. That consisted of 236 Phoenix canariensis trees within the public right-of-way and 44 in the park system. DUDEC inspected these trees on a bi-monthly basis via a ground level inspection of the crown, stems, and visible root collars. During these inspections, we identified trees that were special to neighborhoods or streets and presented those to the UFAC. So currently, 54 date palms have already been removed since we started our inspections in 2023. This is 45 trees from the public right-of-way and 12 from the park system. Unfortunately, there is no biological control agents available in California at this time, and palms can only be chemically treated prophylactically if they want to be saved. This map shows the Phoenix canariensis palms that remain within the public right-of-way. So during the January 2024 inspections, we identified 14 trees that were infested with South American palm weevil, and those were scheduled for immediate removal. This map shows the locations of those 14 trees we identified in January. And similarly, there were 2 trees identified within the parks in January 2024. This map shows the locations of those 2 trees. Those were removed immediately as well. So DUDEC has put together 3 potential treatment options to manage the South American palm weevil infestation within the city. This first option focuses on the removal of infested palms that are identified during the inspections. It doesn't include any prophylactic chemical treatments. The anticipated cost of just removing infested palms as they're found is approximately $50,000 a year, and within 5 years could result in $250,000. Within all 3 treatments, we're recommending that the Phoenix canariensis palms are pruned November through April, which is the overwintering period of the palm weevil, and during forecasted dry weather, which helps reduce the spread of disease. This option would result in the highest rate of palm mortality. So the second option, it focuses only on prophylactic chemical treatment. So we would remove infested trees as we find them, though that would be significantly reduced with chemical treatment of every palm tree within the city. This option has an anticipated cost of $260,000 per year, and over 5 years could result in over $1 million. Though this would have the lowest rate of palm mortality. And then the last option is a combination of both, the first 2. So it would include prophylactic chemical treatment of Canary Island date palms identified as heritage trees. And then also the removal of infested palms that were identified during inspections. The numbers included in this option are for example purposes only. So for this example, we took 10% of the current inventory of Phoenix canariensis trees, which is 23 trees. And so prophylactic chemical treatment of 23 trees is approximately $26,000 a year. Over 5 years, the chemical treatment of 23 trees would result in $132,000, 250. And then combined with the continued removals, has a projected cost of $382,000 within 5 years. And again, pruning during the overwintering period and in dry weather. This is DUDEC's long-term management recommendation, and this is the recommended action item for City Council. So if there are any questions on the material, that
We may have some questions, yes, indeed.
Okay.
So are there public speakers? Okay, we'll hear from the public. What's that? Why don't you come up here and tell us what your question is, and then give us your comments, and we will then endeavor to get the answer as a council to the staff. Here, go ahead, and, sir, ask the question kind of generally.
As I'm hearing what you're saying that over
Sir.
5.
Sure. Face the council, and we'll relay your question over that way. So you raise your question to us, and then we'll.
Sure. So what it sounds like I just heard was that the cost will, I'm being timed now?
Yeah, you get 3 minutes.
Okay, so let me just go right to this.
Okay.
And I just wanted to let the council know that I haven't seen any hardworking, desperate immigrants camping out on our neighborhood that looked similar to all 4 of my grandparents. Most of the ones I found were looking for work. And I think you have some amazing challenges. This one seems like one that we can get our arms around. And in relation to the bond fellows that we're talking to, what you're talking about, if you do make that choice, taking care of those culverts will save so much money over that extended time that it does balance out. And we can go, he and I can go into this later, but your rating will probably never drop below AA+. But that's another discussion. So as these folks know, that UC Irvine through the Huddle Laboratory did a 8-year study about this particular insect that is horrific looking. That's why they call it a Rhinoceros palmarium. And it's not just scary to look at, that's just a human reaction. They really do get into fruits like avocados, other very expensive trees that lots of homeowners have invested in and cared for and taken care of over the years. And just on Crest Drive, the kind of foo-foo neighborhood that I live in and own in, and I hate but love paying the taxes because they go to great things. There are 22 40-foot plus trees. When I was the head of an A's charity in Oakland many years ago, we spent over $5 million, because it's a bigger city, just putting in 15-foot trees that are now 40-foot plus, and they're gorgeous over large swaths of areas. So if you treat these infestations with the chemicals, and it costs under $100,000 a year over a 5 or 6 or 7 year period, the benefit far outweighs the investment. And I realize you folks have to make those decisions. It's tough, but these are smaller dollar amounts. This is something that could become a big problem, and if you treat it well, it's a smaller problem. It's a lot less expensive. And then I'm sure these folks can talk to you about the Huddle study. I don't know what this group was that gave you these numbers, but they all seem manageable. Not treating all of the trees, only treating what you define as heritage trees, I think would, in the long run, be a mistake. They're so valuable, they're so expensive to replace that and so expensive to remove, it's just better to treat them.
So I'll give you, did you get to ask your question?
No, I didn't get a chance to ask the question.
Okay, I'll
but-
give you 30 seconds to ask your question.
So based on what you've seen from the study that your independent group made, does it make sense to you guys to try and treat the trees over a 4 or 5 year period?
Okay, we'll get the answer here in a minute. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And thanks for your service, really.
Yep. Okay, Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you. So I agree with the speaker that this could be a big problem, expensive problem, or it could be a small problem, and that's up to us making a good decision and giving you good direction. So I'm going to put my thoughts out and then see how everyone else thinks. But maybe I can ask some clarifying questions, and I think I know the answers, but just so we can get on the same page. The native Washingtonia foliifera, it's not susceptible to this?
There are lower infestation rates associated with that species, but it can be infested.
Are there palm species that are not susceptible to this weevil?
There are, but they are few and far between.
Okay. So I'm not a fan of invasive non-native palms. So my heart will not bleed in the direction of saving invasive non-native palms, which this is. When you did the 10% of our palms in the public property, on public property, as heritage trees, that seemed a pretty big number. Can you give me the exact number of heritage trees that are this palm?
Currently, there is only one Phoenix canariensis tree that is a heritage tree.
And that's the one at Moonlight Beach?
Correct.
Okay. Because I've seen this kind of problem in other plants, whether it's this weevil or whether it's a borer, we've got invasive insects that really create problems for all of Southern California. I think the best way to approach it is to have a strategy that is a plan to, when we see an infestation, to remove the specimen, to remove the palm, and then try to contain the spread as much as possible by doing that. And you recommended we could do it in the dry season, and some other recommendations that would help to maintain so it wouldn't spread. So we do have one heritage tree that is a Phoenix canariensis. It's an icon. The one tree that we have already, I would recommend that we use the approach that I think is more aligned with option 3, which would be to try to prevent the infestation on that one, and hope, but through our management, that it does not become infected and we can preserve it. So those are 2 suggestions. The kind of the second one, as far as removing infested trees on, or the third one, removing infested trees on public land, I think we need to have a plan for what that replacement could be, because it's valuable to have a palm. It's very valuable to have a palm on public property. But I think we need to move away from these species that are more susceptible. So I think we can come up with a plan that would be a replacement. Maybe it's with another palm that wouldn't be as likely to be infested, which would not be my call, because I'm not a fan of palms. But I know there are a lot of people who are, so I'd like for us to consider replacement, but also to broaden the replacement to replace with another tree where it's appropriate, and I think that's a site-specific decision. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hensy.
Okay, if I'm understanding correctly, I think we're in alignment that you're saying the prophylactic approach should only be used for the heritage tree, and then the management of the other trees should be done through pruning.
Removal.
Removal.
It would
Okay,
be- it would
that's
be
fine.
removal.
Yeah, I am in agreement with that. I think the way that the motion was described by the UFAC is what I support too. I appreciate hearing that, saving, you put forward a proposal that's probably going to be what the public would rather see, which is us trying to save some of these canary date palms. But I think the council has had a lot of discussion recently about native plants and wanting to see more native plants. And One public comment was so insightful, saying that these canary date palms actually threaten native plants in some of our most sensitive habitat areas. So I don't want to see us taking any effort to save them. And I think if I have dabbled a little bit in our integrative pest management policy, and I think that this prophylactic approach is not supported by many members of our community, that they, when they heard that we'd use it, they were reassured by knowing that it was only in these rare occasions for historic trees or for ones that the city has already designated. So I don't want to see us expand the use just to save, like Joy says, a plant that's not particularly important to our native ecosystem.
Deputy Mayor Blackwell.
Yes, I'm going to build off that. I also like treatment option 3, but I was considering all of the private property canary palms, which are going to continue to get the weevil, right? And they're going to continue to have infestation. So when we think about this prophylactic treatment, how effective is it?
It can be effective. It can be very effective. Though for it to be effective, it includes treatments 4 times a year, and that overlaps many blooming season plants. So it is a chemical that is harmful to bees, so it's something that we have to take into consideration as well.
And we are Bee City, right? But there was also a biological control, you said, that doesn't yet exist, but I think is in development. Maybe I misinterpreted, so I wanted to know a little more about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of a crossover between 2 options. So there's a biological control agent, but that only exists in Chile, I believe, currently. And we are not sanctioned to go take that biological control agent away from Chile at this point. There is work being done to allow that, but that's a very lengthy process. There are lower impact style chemical treatment options in the works also, but they're currently under study, and once the studies are done, they have to go through the legislative process, and so it's many years out as well.
Many years, yeah. Not next year, for example.
Unfortunately, likely no.
Well, I do like that treatment option 3. I think trying to preserve some of the heritage trees up to about 23, I think you said, and then getting rid of infestation and pruning. I think the other piece that might be missing, and I know we do some education for the public, but I would just ask if we could do more. I learned a lot by reading the staff report. Not everyone's going to read the staff report. They might not even know they have canary palms. So I think it would be really good if we could beef that up and even do a little more, a media approach to that.
Yeah, currently on the city's urban forestry management page, there is a whole link and page about palm weevil. And so if they were to direct themselves to that page, they could find that. And then once we identify a palm tree that is infested within the right-of-way, we've created door hangers, so we can provide some brief information contained within a door hanger for that property that's being affected by the infestation. And then it also allows them to reach out to the city to request a tree be planted there. So there's 2 sides, one with information, one so they can request a new tree.
Okay, great. And maybe we can do even more, but I appreciate what you're doing so far. Thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, I had a few questions first, and I agree with option 3 and the recommendations so far, but I want to go a little further on some of the questions. Can you estimate what percentage the public Canary Island palms is of the overall population? Is it 50%, 2%?
I have no grasp on what the private population of Phoenix canariensis trees that make up the entire population.
But we would guess that there are a lot more privately owned than public. So that if we treat our quarter, fifth, whatever they might be, there's still a whole bunch of the bugs munching away and grinding through the population out there. So we're not going to control this through our actions, and we don't have the ability to make private people do to control it either. So, yeah, and that's one reason I come back to, plus the integrated pest management policy, I support that. Have you seen, let's talk about once the palms are gone, or so to speak, have you seen yet the palm weevil attack Phoenix reclinata or Washingtonian in Encinitas? No, no incidents yet of that?
Not that I'm aware of, not that it's been reported. Generally, from what I've seen, and I've kind of been at the forefront of this because I was involved with San Diego's city arborist position and got to see the progression of the pest since its origination in the U.S. And so generally, they will hit the Phoenix canariensis first, and as the population declines, they will start moving on to other species.
Okay. Yeah, because to me, the bellwether, I have a Phoenix reclinata in my front yard, but I know Mission Bay has huge we should watch those closely and see if they start going down, and that could be, because the infestation is coming from the south, so I assume that's kind of our future, so.
Yeah, definitely.
And so next question is I lost my train of thought there. The page 20, the attachment 4 was the DUDEC recommendation. I think it spoke directly to Councilwoman Lyons' comment. It says, quote, DUDEC recommends planting tree species that are drought tolerant, disease-resistant, non-invasive, ecologically valuable, and sourced from the region's native flora where practical. So I love that. Can I underline that? Can we highlight that, underline it? And, I think that recommendation and DUDEC's recommendation is right on where. So option 3 plus that recommendation. And I think you answered all my other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. When it comes to this thing that's devouring these trees, it seems to me that if we prophylactically treat, I don't know if we know enough about the bug. Does it land on a tree and then say, this one doesn't taste very good, and then fly away to another tree and find a place to nest? Or how does that work?
So the treatment options available for this pest are most effective when used systemically, and that can be applied through a canopy drench. So getting up in a boom and pouring the chemical on the crown and apical meristem. And so that chemical creates a coating on the tissue that the pest attacks. And so when the pest lands and bites into the meristematic tissue, it consumes the pesticide and then dies. Yes. And so this process then eliminates the pest before the pest does enough damage to kill the meristematic tissue.
Yep. And I believe the palm at Moonlight Beach has already been treated. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
We've already treated that one. That is a special tree, so I appreciate the efforts to get that one treated. And when it comes to, I appreciated the question about the number of trees of the species that are on private property, and I recognize that our tree tracker only has an inventory for publicly owned, trees on public property, right? But it does leave us with the possibility of continuing to be the host city for these bugs for quite some time. So, I think how to best manage the privately owned trees is something that we should be considering as well, even if it's just making the owners of those trees more aware of options they may have. Because, if they don't know that this is ravaging through our city, then the next thing they know, it's dead, and maybe they would have taken some steps. And then the other question is, I used to get text messages from my friend Bruce Hall, who is expert in this field, and he would send me another picture of a dead, crown is gone, and RIP for this one, and they were adding up pretty quickly. So the question then becomes, what is the response? That dead tree could become a nuisance and maybe a fire hazard or other things. Do we have any strategy for how best to manage the trees on private property that are dead and the possible requirement that they be removed?
At this time, if it's on private property, I don't believe the city has any jurisdiction.
So we write citations related to nuisance, some abatement of vegetation that can be a fire hazard, and the question is whether this fits in that category. It looks like John Ugrub is about to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we've had some discussions with code enforcement on how to work with the property owners, and through advanced monitoring of what we intend to do here is we're going to take an aggressive monitoring approach. Is we'll reach out to those property owners when we identify those and start a conversation and let them know what their options are and what we can do and how we can help them.
But we start that conversation at pretty much identifying that they've been infested and it's dead.
Yep.
And,
And then it would evolve to helping them, because we may not get them, a lot of property owners may not be so willing to remove it, then we would involve fire and code to help us.
A couple quick last questions. You mentioned avocado and citrus and stuff. Do these adult bugs just eat that fruit, or do they infest the tree and destroy the tree?
They would eat the fruit.
Okay, so they're not looking to lay their larvae in avocado trees?
No.
Good to hear that. And one last question. You've got these pictures and those things on the far right. How do those work? I mean, is that just a chunk of the tree that they laid their eggs in, or do they create that clump?
Yes, that's a pupal case. And the larvae, when they're ready to pupate, you can see their stages. The larvae are the furthest to the left. And then their progress into adulthood is to the right. So the pupal cases is what the larvae spin, sort of like a cocoon.
Wow. Yeah. So were we able to answer, did you get his question that he had asked about where these costs, I think it was where the cost came from?
Can you repeat the question?
You were comparing the cost of treating say, let's just say for round number, 400 trees that are in the public right of way, 25,000, 30,000 trees. So you were talking about the cost of treating those, and it looks like council decided not to treat them. Can we as citizens, if they're on in our neighborhood, do we have the right to treat them if they're 2 feet from our homes? I'm just wondering why are they not heritage trees if they're in public right of way?
If a citizen would like to nominate a tree as a heritage tree, they could, and that would go to the UFAC, and the UFAC would review that, the Urban Forestry Advisory Committee. There's a process behind the heritage tree program. I don't believe that private citizens can treat trees in the public right-of-way because they are a city asset.
Just want to make sure we're going to abandon those trees and whatever happens.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lyons.
You seem really knowledgeable, so bear with me. I'll ask you another question kind of outside the box. I understand that the county can go around and look for certain pests in our trees. So good, I'm glad you know that program. I don't know it very well, but I do know that there's certain fruit trees that they'll go and they'll look and they'll do tests to see if it's got a certain bug. And my understanding, on your private property, and my understanding is if it does have a certain bug, they'll advise you somehow. Maybe that means treat it or get rid of the tree. Do you know if the county's done anything in this area with this weevil?
They have not, no. The California Department of Food and Agriculture has monitored this pest, but the county does not have a program like what you're referring to at this time for this pest.
All right. So I have a couple clarifying questions after I've heard other people speak. It's my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, that once it's infected, we can just treat it and manage it but it's very unusual for the pest to go away. Is it a lifetime commitment then that we treat it 4 times a year for the rest of its life?
Yes.
And so that palm will never be healthy in my view, because we're investing and we're using a chemical that damages and affects bees, and we're committing to it for the life of that palm tree. It just seems to me like it's not an investment in a healthy environment to try to keep a palm tree on life support. It seems like life support. And being that it's infected, it would be possible for that tree, for that weevil to then jump to other trees and continue to infect other trees, which is one of the reasons why I was recommending that those that we find that are infected be removed and properly removed so it doesn't spread. So given that, and I hear some consensus behind that on treatment 3, I'm looking at treatment 3 and I have another question. One of the bullets is removal of infested palms identified during the rotational palm inspections. And one thing that occurs to me is the rotational palm inspections might be out over a period of time. You just said there were over 300 palms that are in the public right-of-way. Is there any reason or rationale behind bringing that inspection forward and doing it quickly so we can make decisions in a quicker manner before there's more infestations that might end up making a larger problem for us down the road?
So far, when we go out and inspect the trees, there's 226 currently, so there's progressively getting less, which makes our inspection time quicker. But it'll take us about a week to get through all of the trees, to inspect them visually. And then after that, a work order is put together for the removal of the infested trees, which can be completed quickly within another week or 2. So it's a fairly quick process as it is.
Okay.
And then once an inspection cycle is completed, it can be done on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis. It's generally sufficient.
Okay, I'd like to I'd like to make a motion to approve the treatment option number 3.
Councilmember Ehlers.
I'll second that. And if we could add that the DUDEC recommendation, as they made about replacing them with drought-tolerant, disease-resistant, non-invasive, ecologically valuable, and sourced from the region's native flora where practical. Just add that as a friendly amendment. I want it right out there in the motion if you'll take that friendly amendment.
Yes, I will.
Perfect. And then I just wanted to, I had the same thought about, boy, we're committing to do this forever, but I'm also thinking what we're really doing is buying time until maybe a biological approach could be developed in the next 1 to 5 years, 10 years. So I'm hoping that even on the heritage tree, we don't have to do this forever because of the impact to the environment, the potential impact to the tree's health itself. So do you care to comment on the likelihood that we'll have to do this for 100 years?
Even if there were a biological control agent and program in place in California, it would be likely that chemical treatment would be recommended in order to ensure the survival of that tree. Biological control programs can help reduce pest populations, and they can be effective in controlling pest populations under certain thresholds. But if there are historical trees or heritage trees that are deemed valuable, the best way to ensure the survival of those trees is through chemical treatment.
Okay. Well, and where this is from originally, the Canary Island palms are from Canary Islands. Is the palm weevil from South America? And normally they wouldn't be in the same location? That's what's going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Although it has gotten to its origin place, and it was a huge catastrophe.
Yes, and I support the motion, but I do think that we should be reviewing this, maybe annually is too much, but you know, the effectiveness and the impacts on these trees, I think is important to, you know, have an opportunity to speak to and get a sense of what the impacts on the urban forests are. And so, you know, I would encourage, you know, I don't necessarily want to change the motion or anything, but that would be my request, that we get this back in a year or so.
Mayor, if I could comment, we can add it as part of our annual State of the Urban Forest Address we do annually.
That'd be great.
Perfect.
And then the other issue I wanted to mention is that I think that the Heritage Tree Program is one that I'm proud of and fully support. But I think that I would like to make it clear that if there is a run on applications to declare these trees throughout the city as heritage, I would want to, you know, maybe take some steps to address that. And I don't know how we would address it, but I would like to know that. I also know that we do have some heritage trees that are on private property, and if a private property owner who owns one of these trees thinks that getting it established as a heritage tree will then have it treated on their private property, I think that that's something we need to make clear is not going to happen. But we have a motion and a second, and do we need any clarification on what was moved?
I'm just going to clarify to make sure I have it correct. So it was to approve management option number 3 for the treatment of trees on the heritage tree list infested with the SAPW, and removal and replacement of all other trees infested with tree species that are drought tolerant, disease resistant, non-invasive, ecologically valuable, and sourced from the region's native flora where practical.
Thank you.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you to all you folks who are dedicated to the care of our urban forest. And Brian Bishop, thank you for joining the UFAC again. I know that you had some thoughts about having nights free, but thanks for stepping back up.
City trees are worth it.
Okay, on to, we have no informational items, but tonight we do have an item in the 12 category. Councilmember initiated item from Councilmember Joy Lyons regarding the City of Encinitas developing a construction cost estimate for the beautification of the San Leo Avenue and Manchester Avenue intersection in Cardiff by the Sea.
So as far as teeing it up, I'll go ahead and give an overview of this item. And I'm assuming Kathy, by looking at your slips, you've got some speakers. Okay. So this is an item that came to my attention by some residents in the Cardiff district. And it really resonated to me as a perfect example of a quick build. And when we first brought up the idea of quick build several years ago, I thought it was a really good fit for these kinds of improvements that are pretty small and modest in nature, but could really add a lot of value to our community, to our quality of life, and to the beautification of our environment. So a couple really engaged and smart residents, including Ross Ryder, who's in the room, and Rich Reisner, brought this to my attention, who have put together the documents that you see attached to this item. And when they talked to me about it, I thought, well, I think this is a kind of item that the city can support. This is a modest item that really has some volunteers behind it, and it's improvement in the right-of-way. And it would be incredibly hard for just a group of volunteers to move forward with this. So how can the city participate? And it would really improve the right-of-way in this area. So the area is the intersection of Manchester and San Alejo, and that's an area we did a quick build just recently, a couple years ago now, that everyone will probably remember, which improved the safety of the pedestrian crossing and the walkway, the pedestrian way along San Alejo. So this is adjacent to that and complementary to it. In the council member initiated item, you'll see some drawings that have been put together that articulate it pretty specifically. So I think that helps to communicate it, and I wanted to have the opportunity to bring that before us so that everyone could see it, so that we could make a decision about putting it on our list of projects to consider for funding, and also to get city staff to help articulate what the funding what need might be behind getting this done. And now that we're in our consideration of funding items, I thought the timing was good to bring this to everyone's attention and give it a little bit of time as a council member initiated item for the volunteers and the constituents who have put a lot of effort behind it to speak to this item and show us what it is. And the support for this goes beyond just the two individuals. The Cardiff Town Council, the Cardiff 101 have both come out in support of it. And Ross and Rich have done their diligence like they have in the past with other proposals, where they've already met with city staff and they've talked about the geometry and safety, and they've talked about and they've integrated those city constraints and ideas into what they're presenting here. So really, so that's just teeing it up. I can answer specific questions. I think our speakers will have a few things to say, and I would like to really request that we give it some consideration for staff to put together what it would cost for the city to fund this project, or perhaps help fund this project to help it move forward, to get it put in the ground, and for our consideration in this funding cycle.
Two speakers, Ross Ritter and, is that Raul Dispandi, I think, and Scott Campbell.
As you know, my name is Ross Ritter. I'm a Cardiff activist and have been residing in Cardiff for the last 24 years. I'd like to first thank Council Member Lyons for the support of this San Alejo Manchester beautification project and for bringing it forward to the council. I'd also like to thank the council again for previously funding the recent mobility improvements that Councilmember Lyons referred, that included installing new crosswalks, extending a sidewalk to the crosswalk, removing invasive acacia trees, installing a decomposed granite path from the intersection to the San Alejo trailhead. These improvements have drastically improved pedestrian and bicyclist safety and improved the views for those driving through the area. So it's really been a win-win for everyone. This beautification project is the final phase of our efforts along this heavily traveled thoroughfare into our community from the I-5 freeway in eastern Encinitas along Manchester Avenue. It would involve de-paving the triangular area formed when the city made this an all-stop sign intersection. This project area is all on city-owned land and would include a Cardiff by the Sea monument side, readable on both sides, made from concrete and cord-in steel that would weather well over time. It would also include landscaping that would require no irrigation after the plants are established. The sign and landscape palettes have been designed using the Cardiff 101 branding guide and are congruent with the conceptual designs for the Harborough Seaside Parkway in Cardiff, currently under development. This truly is a community-driven project that's already been involved many hundreds of hours of volunteer time. As I mentioned in the previous meeting, I really would like to thank Rich Reisner of Grounded Landscape Architecture for volunteering his time to meet with me, city staff, Cardiff 101 Design Committee, the board of Cardiff 101, and for developing these amazing plans. It's nice because we basically have kind of put together the project and basically handing them to the city for your review and consideration. As Councilmember Lyons had mentioned, We've shared and collaborated with stakeholders at the city in planning, engineering, and traffic, as well as other stakeholders in the community, including the Nature Collective, Cardiff 101 Design Committee, Cardiff Town Council, and the Board of Cardiff 101. They all support these efforts. The beautification project would be a demonstration of the tremendous pride that we have in our beautiful Cardiff community, turning a paved eyesore to a community feature while demonstrating our commitment to native, drought-tolerant landscaping.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rahul Deshpande, and I'm speaking for the Cardiff 101 Main Street Association. So first of all, thank you, Councilmember Lyons, for bringing this up, and thank you, Ross, for spearheading this over the last many years. This whole place, to be able to walk to the lagoon now safely has made a difference in my life, so I really appreciate that. The Cardiff 101 Main Street Design Committee and the Cardiff Town Council express our support for the San Elijo Manchester project. Our board and our committees are made up of local businesses and residents who value the character of Cardiff. Our design committee, which consists of resident architects and planners who have advised the city on projects such as the Coastal Rail Trail and the railroad construction completed by Sandag, volunteered time to review and suggest changes to the architectural design of the plan. We recognize the need for the community improvement of the area of San Elijo, Manchester, and appreciate the willingness to continue to provide a clearly defined entrance into Cardiff by the Sea. This is really the front door to Cardiff for people coming through on Manchester. We like the design and are in favor of the proposal, which maintains the existing drainage channel. The Cardiff 101 Design Committee looks forward to this vision becoming a reality. The Cardiff Town Council looks forward to this vision becoming a reality. This is a much-needed aesthetic improvement. Thank you.
I support beautification efforts in Encinitas. This is a good thing. We have a nice sign in New Cadia. There's none in Cardiff. This is a good idea. This project is not on the donut chart. It's nowhere near the ITF task force. In fact, it's interesting that this is being brought up. You know, did we forget about the priority lists on the task force? Did we forget about the priority list on the ITF task force? And this is interesting. We need beautification is good stuff. I think if you put some water in, the community would probably step up and do their own labor. I had occasion a couple weeks ago, took a little cruise around Eastern Encinitas, and there was a volunteer in front of OPE school, weeding and doing stuff. I think this could be very similar, and this is a way to get around the costs. I'll just put in a little bit of water. We could bring in buckets, but that gets very tedious if there was just even a little bit of water. Now, I mentioned I live in the other side of town, in Acadia. We have a nice welcome to the Acadia sign. There's a homeless guy living in there, and he got removed, and he's back. How are we going to make sure that this doesn't become a homeless shelter also? I mean, it's sometimes too small area, but these are very serious issues. If we have a beautification on Cardiff, can we get some in New Encinitas and in Olivenhain? We're going to get some art, but maybe we should get some nice welcome to Olivenhain signs too as part of this. We can't just have one. We got to do it for everybody. I support this. This is rare. Usually I'm pretty harsh, and I'm probably saying harsh stuff right now. But the cost and everything is going to be an issue. It's a small amount, but these small amounts add up. You just had the budget stuff. You spent a lot of time talking about this stuff, this very small project, and you missed Last week's, how many? 23 million on drainage in the Katy. That wasn't even talked about earlier today. You know, I don't really know where I'm going. I just want you to think about all this stuff, and I think this is a good idea. And I have plants in my yard. I'll volunteer to put a couple in there. They're specialty ones. And we're going to go home early tonight too. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ehlers.
So I wanted to address the Levenheim one, and I think it's a good example too. There are actually boulders in Levenheim at each one of the 5 entrances, and it was a completely volunteer group that put that together. Deb Muzzy led it. It's probably 15 to 20 years ago, maybe probably 20 years ago now that it happened. Wrought iron, painted wrought iron, Levenheim, signage on it, and they're still there because they're rocks. They couldn't go anywhere, but it did take coordination with the city. But the funding, I think, all of it came from private donations for that, including the planting, much smaller scale than this, but times 5, so maybe on the order. So the big question I had is, I support signage too. I supported the Levenheim effort. It's really, to me, how much. And if it is a joint public-private fundraising type project, then and it doesn't move the needle too much on our capital problem that you heard earlier tonight, then I would support it. I would question, will it work without water? I think the ones in Levenheim, and they were drought tolerant. They weren't all natives, unfortunately, but that was a long time ago. They lasted for a while, and then they dwindled. And so, I think there's still some more homework to do, but I want to know how much, first and foremost, so.
Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. Yeah, if I read the proposal correctly, the proposal is to have the city develop a cost estimate for the scope of what this project would entail, and I'm supportive of that. And like Bruce, I have some historic knowledge of how the Leucadia sign came to be, and that was also by an effort and expenditure from the Leucadia Main Street Association. And I discussed this with Ross, and he said, yeah, I think it's difficult sometimes now that you've got volunteers that want to donate things, but maybe the city would rather just take it on and do it themselves because there's less risk involved or whatever reason. And I do understand that because while I think that the depaving is excellent and we should look for opportunities to do that, I don't see volunteers out there with their jackhammers removing the asphalt. So I think there is a need for the city to take part somehow, but I think we should jump at opportunities to work with organizations that give so much to our city, especially in the donation of the design. I think that with all the talk that we've been doing on basically every meeting today about native plants, I would love to see this be a native plant demo garden, or if it's not a demo garden, that it includes native plants, because I would consider this area really sensitive and biologically diverse and rich area in its proximity to the lagoon. So that would be my input, and I hope this moves forward and we'll be able to consider this as part of the budget discussion.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Blackwell.
Yes, I just want to celebrate residents coming forward and trying to make our city more beautiful. I think that is a really good idea, and this is an area that doesn't have it, and there is no Cardiff sign, so I think it is something worth pursuing. So I'm supportive of getting a cost estimate. I wanted to ask City Manager if you would, do we have the resources to do that cost estimate in line with our budget timing?
Yes, we can estimate it. I mean, it's a kind of a swipe, but we can estimate the cost before the next budget workshop.
Okay, thanks. I think we'd also want to include that ongoing maintenance, because I agree. I think the plan called for native plants, if I read that correctly, and we know native plants are sometimes harder to take care of and get rooted, and so it will take some ongoing maintenance. So I would like to understand that total cost of what it would take. But, again, I'll go back to saying maybe, and back to Councilmember Ehlers' comment about public-private partnership to do some fundraising for that. Maybe that's also another way to move it along faster. But let's get the cost estimated and go from there. But again, thank you for the time you've put into it, the design that was provided, and just the effort to try to make the city more beautiful.
Yes, and in my conversations with Ross and Rich Reisner, they were clear that, they weren't looking just exclusively with their hand out. They were prepared to get their hands dirty, right? So it is, but it was important to get it in the city's, area of expertise to identify, the implications for, liability issues and other things. We don't want necessarily a bucket brigade, and shovels and going out there in the public just doing this in an unsanctioned way. My goal is to not only know the cost, but to maybe even break it down into some components that if the C-101 Main Street Association and Cardiff Town Council could raise some philanthropic money, contributions to the C-101 as a 501c4, 3, whatever you are. And so I think it's important to embrace these opportunities. I will say that Cardiff by the Sea has always led in this citizen initiative effort. Brett Farrow designed the sidewalk in front of Cardiff School, and the city took those designs and ended up putting in the sidewalks. Here's another example of the community coming forward with some actionable plans, and I appreciate it a lot. So I do support, asking the city manager to direct staff to identify some of the important things that we should be considering on this project, especially the cost, which, as I recall, I think Rich had it at about $100,000 for the construction of the whole thing. Maybe there's a way to phase that a little bit too, so a lot of stuff that I think is worth considering. Councilmember Lyons.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to put forward a motion then that would capture the recommendation to have city staff put together a cost estimate, given your comments, Mayor, about looking at it as a continued partnership with the citizens and how the residents are interested in continuing to be involved, but considering that there are some fundamental things that it makes more sense for the city to do. So I think you captured it well, and I would just like to move the recommendation for the city to put the cost estimate together and also to add it to the list for our further consideration.
I would second that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your efforts to bring it this far. We're moving on now from the 12 section into the 13 section, which is council member reports pursuant to AB 1234.
I have nothing to report.
Just attended a Encinitas Wastewater Authority this morning.
Okay, I do have a little announcement that I would like to make, and it's not pursuant exactly to any of the outside boards and commissions that I serve on, but it is something that I have done a lot of introspection about and discussed thoroughly with my family. And I would like to let you know that I have decided not to seek re-election for the District 2 seat here at Encinitas. My life has changed quite a lot since I assumed this role in 2019, and I used to be an unmarried person who'd go home to a very quiet home at night. And since that time, I have married, and I have a daughter, and I actually have another daughter on the way, and when we meet again, I'll be 6 months pregnant. So I'm looking forward to finishing my term. I'm looking forward to a lot of great work that we still have to do. I'm really proud of what we've accomplished together, particularly that my daughters, plural, will be able to walk to school now with the construction of the El Portal undercross and the phase 1 of the streetscape. And I recently heard an interview with Katie Porter, and she said, the work in Congress is worthwhile work, and it's great work, and I feel that way. And working with all of you, dedicated staff, public servants, and my colleagues has just been the gift of a lifetime, seeing how the sausage is made, how decisions are made, how how the world works. So I feel very privileged to have received that opportunity at quite a young age. I think it took me a couple years to wrap my head around the fact that I went from an advocate to somebody that got to make some of these critical decisions on behalf of my community so quickly, and it's not lost on me of what an amazing experience this has all been. So that being said, the job is hard, and it's especially hard to do just as a co-provider for my family, as somebody whose childcare responsibilities have increased by 200%, and also the elder care responsibilities that I have on my plate. So with that, I look forward to seeing you all next month. And it's just been such a pleasure. So thank you to all of you.
Well, thank you for all that you've done, and I have definitely really appreciated the perspective that you have brought to this body, and I do recall you being an advocate for several years before serving on the council, and I trust that your advocacy will not stop with your decision to not seek re-election. So I look forward to your continued participation in this city's business. Deputy Mayor Blackwell.
I have nothing to report, but let it be known that Kelly's advocacy will be limited to 3 minutes at a time.
Plus 2 time donations from
Plus
from
2
anybody I
time
can get.
donations, so it will be a change.
No fair in bringing Lakey.
I was just going to say, can you bring your daughters for the
Yes,
time donation?
Yes.
We're working on her signing her name, so she's
Yes, yes. And I had a Sandag meeting. We looked at a draft budget that kind of kicks off the public review of that. We also, I serve on the subcommittee for selecting a new CEO and had first round interviews that went well, got some fantastic candidates. And then we do have a special meeting of Sandag on Friday because of the auditor's report that was recently released on the 125 at the city. Sandag has a Office of the Independent Auditor that came out of AB 805, and she did a new auditor who did her first report as a result of the snafus that we've been seeing with the 125, significant issues with contractors and such. And it turns out that the recommendations that she's making need to be addressed pretty quickly. So the chair called a special meeting for Friday, and hopefully we can get the ship righted when it comes to the 125. So city manager reports.
Okay, this week's hottest event is the Encinitas, thank you, I appreciate it. Encinitas Spring Egg Hunt this Saturday, 3 different times, 10:15 a.m., 11 a.m., and 11:45 a.m. Each of those times will have kid age segregated areas, etc. And in addition to the egg hunts, there's a live concert by Hullabaloo, visits from everyone's favorite bunny, and there's also some crafting. This is a rain or shine event. If for some reason it's pouring down rain, there is a drive-by egg distribution, so don't miss it.
My colleague mentioned that she's aware of the plans for beacons. Is there something that you can announce here tonight?
There's nothing that I can announce tonight. We have been given the go-ahead from our geotechnical engineer to begin rebuilding the switchback trail. We are awaiting a quote. Depending upon how much that quote comes in, it may have to come to council for approval. And we hope to have it reopened by Memorial Day.
Okay. City attorney reports?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing as exciting as the Easter Bunny. However, I just want to let the council know that the oral argument on the city's grants pass case, our Amici brief, will be on April 22nd. I just want to also remind the council, typically in Supreme Court arguments, Amici do not argue. There are some very complex rules that would allow someone each to argue if invited to do so by the Supreme Court. But, we will not be arguing, we're not planning on arguing. But there will, of course, be an oral argument by the parties.
Thank you for that update. City clerk reports.
Just when you thought I was done with commissions. Now we have the Youth Commission has opened the annual recruitment for the 2024-25 school year. So those applications are available on the website for all students that are grades 7 through 12 in Encinitas.
And we're still accepting applications for the senior commission?
Yes, we did receive one. We do have one. And I just sent that off to the registrar to verify voter registration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your participation tonight, and we are now adjourned.